Spiritual Direction from Dante, Ascending Mount Purgatory, Canto 2. Topics: Spiritual Inertia, Eagerness for our Heavenly Home, Human Love Purified, The Distracted Life. Getting started is indeed half the battle. Call it inertia or procrastination. Sometimes it can be an enormous struggle to begin work, especially when the work promises to be long or taxing. We come up with excuses, and we avoid thinking about it. We distract ourselves with other things. Putting things off is a minor art form, and it can be humbling to realize how unable we are to get ourselves going. Sometimes it takes something from the outside, an external stimulus, a firm shove in the back to get us moving. This tendency can be even greater in the spiritual life. The tasks are often not as visible as our everyday work is, and there always seems to be plenty of time to get around to it. We do have plenty of time, don't we? In line 7, the poem begins with a reference to the dawn, the rising sun now peeking above the horizon, a symbol of God's goodness and grace poured out upon His creation. Because of the geography of the mountain, progress here will bring us closer and closer to the light. The transformative activity of this light, it is more than merely a source of illumination, is a recurring theme in Purgatorio. The imagery of dawn is made even more powerful when we realize that this is Easter morning, the time of the resurrection of our Lord and of His triumph over death and sin. In line 10, Dante has difficulty actually getting started on the journey up the mountain. He reflects upon the journey in his mind, but he doesn't take any real steps. The body lingers while the spirit goes. How like many people in the spiritual life who think about being spiritual and perhaps read books about it. They know what they need to do, but they don't actually get around to praying or doing what is necessary to grow in virtue. This is also an example of Dante's use of anticipatory imagery that prepares our mind for what is about to come. Because in the next canto, we will encounter those who were indolent or negligent about their spiritual responsibilities. Dante has already begun to use images of delay and inertia to prepare us for meeting them. This front-loading of imagery is a technique Dante will use regularly as a preparation for and transition to another topic. In line 13, Dante is startled out of his reverie. On a regular basis, he gets off track and is brought back to his proper focus, not by his own efforts, but by the circumstances of his journey. What happens to him helps direct him. This is so often the way grace works. God intervenes by the surprise phone call, a distraction in our thoughts, a sudden remembrance. These events might seem coincidental, but they are too regular and too helpful for coincidence to be an adequate explanation. They are providence at work in our lives that theologians call actual grace, the little pushes and pulls by which God protects us from temptation or inspires us to good actions. He is intervening all the time, if only we could learn to recognize it. This canto is very similar to Canto 3 of the Inferno, in which Dante arrived at the river Acheron and saw the damned souls waiting to be ferried across to hell. Both the canto in Inferno and the present one here serve as entry cantos into their respective regions. Both use boats to transfer the souls, and both boats are navigated by spiritual beings. The comparison also shows us the drastic difference between entering hell and entering purgatory. Dante is told to kneel to give honor to the angel bringing the boat of new arrivals to purgatory. The angel is very different from the ministers of God's justice in hell. They were pathetic creatures who were both punishing and being punished. The angel is a glorious being on a mission of mercy. The boat carrying these souls to purgatory has no other means of propulsion than his angel's wings. In hell, the boat was powered by an oar. Nothing so mundane here in purgatory. The power of grace is at work here and is the only way to get you to purgatory. You simply cannot get there on your own power. Without forgiveness and justification, which cannot be attained through man's natural powers, reaching the shores of purgatory, let alone reaching our supernatural end of being with God in heaven, is impossible. The travelers will be reminded often that grace and not natural power is supreme on this mountain. And is said, he holds man's instruments in scorn. Dante finds he is unable to endure the sight of the angel. His glory is too much for Dante's unpurified eyes. Like someone coming from a dark place into bright sunlight, the light here is, at times, overwhelming and penetrating. Dante must be cleansed before he can bear to look directly at the light. In the meantime, he must lower his eyes, another sign of humility. Our consciences are often as blinded by the light as Dante was at the sight of the angel. We have darkened our sense of right and wrong by our bad actions, and through the constant voice of the world wearing away our moral principles. Our conscience is like the windshield of a car, smeared with bugs and spray from the road. When the light shines on it, all that we can see is the dirt. We are blinded by the light. The early Christians needed encouragement since they lived in a world very foreign and even hostile to their beliefs. They clearly did not belong, and what they believed was considered illegal, antisocial, and even treasonous. But this isolation from earthly society drove them to set their hearts on an unchanging homeland in heaven. This earthly world is a transient place where we are merely passing through it, like pilgrims or exiles, as the people of Israel passed from Egypt into the promised land. These all died in faith, not having received what was promised, but having seen it and greeted it from afar, and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they are seeking a homeland. Hebrews 11:13 and 14. Christians should have a yearning for what comes after this world. There we shall truly, for the first time, be at home. The In Exitu Psalm, 113, is a typical song of pilgrimage. It symbolizes the passage of these souls from earth, or Egypt, to the promised land of the holy souls. As with Dante's reed around his waist, the psalm reminds us that the souls here are on pilgrimage, just passing through on their way to a holy destination. They sing the psalm together. Notice the unanimity of the holy souls. This liturgical imagery is typical of the Purgatorio. Purgatory is a churchy place and is filled with divine worship, a good preparation for the heavenly worship for which they are being made ready. Purgatory happens under the sign of the cross, the symbol of the saving work of Christ that makes the salvation of souls possible. And Dante's first sight of the southern hemisphere was of the Southern Cross. Here, the angel makes the sign of the cross over the newly arrived, who then prostrate themselves on the shore of the mountain. Perhaps they even kiss the ground when they land. They've arrived on holy ground, true terra firma. They know they are truly blessed to be there. And the new arrivals are eager. They want direction so they can get moving. Please, if you know it, show the way. There is no need to strike them with an oar as Charon did to the damned souls crossing the river Acheron in the Inferno. They are ready to begin their journey and are humble enough to ask directions with the first people they meet. They now understand that the pains of this mountain are the only things between them and the blessedness of heaven, and they are ready to move. In line 63, Virgil had been very much in charge as he and Dante made the journey through hell. But here, however, he admits he's also a stranger, a newcomer, like they are, and will be dependent upon the guidance of others. He is a pilgrim too. If Virgil, as many commentators have argued so convincingly, is a sort of personification of reason and the natural virtue human beings are capable of, his admission of needing guidance himself is particularly interesting. Virgil could figure out and explain to Dante the destructive power of sin and the resulting suffering it caused, but he cannot explain what he sees in purgatory. Reason alone will not be able to chart a course here. He will need the advice of those who are already here, because here Things are ordered towards a supernatural goal, a goal beyond reasoning's imagining and Virgil's comprehension. But Virgil is a pilgrim here for a deeper reason. He, like Dante, is also on a journey of self-discovery. His own conscience will be purified as he progresses up the mountain. He is here to learn, not merely to guide. And Virgil is bold enough to think that after having climbed from the depths of hell, ascending Mount Purgatory will be child's play. As we shall see, he is in for a surprise. Growth in holiness is more demanding and more complex than he ever expected. The souls see that Dante is alive and turned pale with wonder. They try in vain to embrace him and them in return, not realizing that physical and spiritual beings can have no real contact. It is easy to picture the afterlife as something quite solitary. In purgatory, our focus will be on purifying ourselves of the stains of our past sins. In heaven, the beatific vision, seeing God face to face, will be the foundation of our happiness. And all of these ideas are correct. Our happiness must be something social, because we are social beings by nature. We cannot be fulfilled merely as individuals without being in a community. Life in purgatory and in heaven will be our human loves and attachments purified, but not eliminated. We will love more, not less, and we will be loved more too. The joy with which Dante is greeted shows a moving spirit of solidarity among the holy souls, rejoicing in each other's presence and happiness. Dante cannot help but respond in kind, even before he recognizes the person who has embraced him. Here we see the mutual joy experienced by the members of the mystical body of Christ. The love they feel is not based upon natural motives, national ties, or family connections, but merely upon the love they have for God, a love that unites them to God and to one another. Here on the shores of purgatory, no one is a stranger. No one is left out. Everyone is welcome and at home. The bonds of human affection endure beyond death. Dante realizes that the soul he tried to embrace is, in fact, someone he knows well, a close friend. The love they felt on earth for one another is not gone once he died. In fact, that love is transformed and somehow more perfect. Here we see the foundation of the communion of saints, a communion which death does not destroy, but purifies. Dante's friend, Casella, has only arrived in purgatory because of the special graces offered in the Jubilee year of 1300. Special indulgences are offered during these jubilees, which are usually applied to the souls of the dead. These indulgences are the Church's way of assisting its members by the merit of the good works of Christ and his holy ones. Like chipping in to help a friend pay off a debt, the Church uses indulgences to help its members make restitution for sins that have already been forgiven. We help to do this whenever we offer things up for the souls in purgatory. Casella would not be where he was without the assistance of the indulgences of the Jubilee year gave him. Despite Dante's argument with the Church in political matters, he believes deeply in its spiritual power. Casella is here because of the power of the Church to loose from sins. Matthew 16:19 says, "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." That power, divinely bestowed, is a reality, regardless of what Dante thinks about the personal holiness of the individuals who guide the Church or their politics. In line 103, the mouth of the Tiber, the river that runs through Rome, is the entry port for purgatory. This is a simple way of expressing the truth that salvation always happens through the Church, even for those who are not explicitly members of it. In the famous words of St. Cyprian, "Outside the Church, there is no salvation." Those who are saved, but never were official, visible members of the Church, while they lived, are associated to the Church in an invisible way. Canto is an example of the saving power of the Church extending beyond the Church's doors. he is somehow a member. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here in purgatory. Focus is a difficult thing to keep, and it is getting more difficult in our society. We try to multitask, juggling several things at the same time. We constantly check our phones or emails. We're pulled off track by the links that appear on computers, resulting in hours of wasted time. We now even have a crime called distracted driving while using electronic devices. As advertising experts will tell us, we have a very short attention span. Perhaps that is why so many people identify with the character Dory in Finding Nemo. We all know what it feels like to be mentally scattered. Our distractions might not be anything sinful in themselves, although they certainly can be. But when we have something important to do, distractions of any kind prevent us from living up to our potential. They slow us down and sap our energy. How much more we could accomplish if only we could focus. Returning now to line 106, Dante continues in the joyful spirit of this gathering on the shores of Purgatory by asking his friend Casella to sing one of his songs. Dante had been a love poet, and Casella was a writer and performer of love songs. They have much in common. Asking Casella to perform one of his songs seems a normal request, at least in human terms. Casella is very talented, and soon everyone is immediately enthralled by the beauty of what they heard, and they say, "It seems our minds were touched by nothing else." And then Canto reprimands the souls for listening to the song, not because it is something evil, but because it is distracting them from their purpose, a purpose for which they were so eager just a few minutes earlier. In the spiritual life, sometimes even good and permissible things can get us off track. A temptation does not have to be something sinful, merely something different from what we should be doing. Salvation isn't something passive, but requires our own activity. We need to focus on climbing the mountain. Heaven, in the words of St. Philip Neri, isn't made for sluggards. This reprimand is particularly fitting as we prepare to meet the indolent. They have wasted precious time on earth rather than making real spiritual progress. And time is precious. It has been given to us so that we can prepare for our eternal destiny. How infrequently we give our eternal purpose even our partial attention, let alone our full focus. Rather than respond defensively to harsh words of correction, as most people on earth would do, these well-disposed souls scatter when corrected by Canto, taking his reprimand to heart. They are humble, without the usual strut to show their pride. They call to mind a recurring theme in the book of Proverbs about the proper attitude a soul should have to correction. Whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates reproof is stupid. Or, a wise son hears his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to a rebuke. Or, a fool despises his father's instruction, but he who needs admonition is prudent. Or, he whose ear heeds wholesome admonition will abide among the wise. He who ignores instructions despises himself, but he who heeds admonition gains understanding. These holy souls are certainly to be numbered among those wise and prudent souls, for as soon as Canto's words register in their minds, they respond without complaint or excuse. Notice, too, that Dante and Virgil do the same.